Hey, good people. Davia here, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Shaker, a Davia Williams Stevenson podcast. I know y'all probably tired of hearing this, but I am always so impressed and so humbled by the people who choose to sit on this couch with me. I can't even believe it. Today, I have Dr. Monica Cox. Y'all gonna love this conversation. This woman has done a whole lot of things, and I think my personal opinion, and I think this will be the opinion of many, is freeing a lot of people to live their authentic lives. I believe that. So I'm gonna read a little bit from her website, drmonicacox.com. Y'all gonna wanna know that before the end of this day. Monica F. Cox, PhD, is a disruptor, a trailblazer, a change agent, and a leader who believes in living an authentic life, even if it makes people uncomfortable. That's so important. She grew up in rural Southeast Alabama, where she was raised by her educated parents to persist in the face of personal and professional adversity. A highly lauded coach and consultant, I do know that. You guide clients in areas of career development, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and business strategy. A distinguished professor, I believe, of engineering.
Yes.
An entrepreneur whose inquisitive nature contributes to her passion for educating others and guiding them on journeys that connect to the core of who they are with the legacies they want to leave. What a beautiful mission statement. I really love this. It's so client focused, forward thinking. There's a lot of energy, even in the words that you used. Having people think forward to legacy, living your authentic self, even if it makes people uncomfortable. I love that. Don't mind me. I'm of a stage where sometimes I sweat. So if you're lucky, you'll get here too. Anywho, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome. I've been looking forward to this conversation. You're doing some really cool things. And I know that you're not from, we're in Central Ohio, and I know that you're not from here. You're from Alabama.
Right.
What got you here? Tell me a little bit about how you ended up in Central Ohio.
So really it's my academic journey. Mm-hmm. I was always in school, and I would say I was probably in school until I was about 29 years old. I went back to back to back, and I had some internships in between, but I just moved to institution. So I went to school in Atlanta at Spelman.
Okay.
Then I went to the University of Alabama, back to Nashville, Tennessee. And my first job was at Purdue University. I was there for 10 years. And then I came to Columbus to work at The Ohio State University. So I've always moved based on my career trajectory.
So engineering, right? So there's such a movement to try to get girls, try to get women interested in STEM, or STEAM as many are calling it now. Did you feel, were you an oddity at that time going into engineering? What type of engineering did you?
So I'm an industrial engineer by training. I will say that my parents, particularly my father, had the foresight for me to do STEAM. So I remembered going to community college when I was in what was it? Probably the early 1980s. And there were computer classes. So if there was an opportunity, my father would enroll me in it. So I did summer programs at Tuskegee University, Auburn University, just any type of exposure. And I received a full scholarship to go to Spelman College, but I worked at NASA.
Okay.
So,
wow.
So I had fellowship. So NASA paid for my undergraduate education.
Okay.
They also paid for my graduate education.
Wow.
And it was just honestly like I was paid to do this, so and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, you just dropped some big names there. NASA paid for my education, and I really appreciate how intentional your parents were in guiding you to these opportunities. That's an incredible benefit. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you still have both your parents?
No. Both my parents have passed. So they were a little bit older when I was born, and I am an only child. So, I mean, I feel like I've grown up early. My mother passed last year. And in my most recent job, since I moved to Ohio, I've lost both of them. So it's been an experience, but I also had a child when I was in that job as well. So if you think about the span of time I think it's been 7 years. I've been here almost 8 years. But I had my first child and lost both my parents in that time.
That is huge.
In the pandemic.
And that small thing, the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah. Those are major, major transitions.
They are.
Yeah. I don't have either of my parents. My mother died pretty young. Well, she was 59. I was my early 20s. I'd had my first child, but he was a baby. He was 2. And my dad about 15 years ago. So there is something about this. It feels like the roof is gone, like you're in a building without the ceiling. I feel for some time. But you also had that new generation.
Absolutely.
To raise up. So very cool. So you came here.
Yes.
As a professor?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, and as a department chair. So I was an administrator. That's the thing that drew me here. I often tell people I was 39 years old when I became a full professor and when I became a department chair. So to be at that place so early was a lot. Yeah. And I thought that I would be on the path to be a university president. That's something I wanted to do since I was 19. But because of situations in my job, some complexities, some legal aspects, some things that I just didn't expect, that dream felt as if it died.
Felt as if it died. Is it dead?
You know what? It's too small.
Okay.
That's the thing that came to me.
Okay.
You know, I used to want to do it, but what I've realized through the power of social media is that, like, whenever you're a president, a university president, and I do have a degree in higher education, so, you know, I've learned this. I've learned about the infrastructure and all those elements, is that you are at the mercy of your board of trustees and at the people at that institution. But when I began to do work on social media, I realized that there are people beyond the borders of a single institution, and to be able to bring those people together at a higher level is bigger. It's more impactful. It really addresses a lot of the systemic oppression that you see at local levels. And I just became involved in a larger movement. So one of my colleagues says that I'm kind of like the Harriet Tubman in my field. And I do see that. And I even have a story that I can share really quickly. Because this just even came to me this year. And I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Audre Lorde, but, you know, she speaks about like the master's tools, not dismantling the master's house. And I think that there are so many people who go into organizations and they think that they're going to change those organizations. We talk about dismantling. So after the murder of George Floyd, everybody said, we're going to have to shift. Everything's going to change. But that's really not how change works. And when you are in a system or in a country like the US, where we have the history that we have, then the shift is not going to be fast. And I realized that people need to realize that they have homes and land outside the master's house. And so my purpose, even as I'm in a system, is to be with the people in the system and pull them out and say, look, here's your land. Here's your stuff. Use the resources, learn the tools, get the infrastructure, but know that if and when this space no longer serves you, you have your land.
And it's not built to serve you.
That's it. Yeah. And so that's the shift. When I'm telling you the dream was too small, I don't want that house. I don't need that house. My house and my land are elsewhere, and the thing that I can build can be better and safer than anything that someone tries to punish me for because I don't follow their rules. So that's the shift for me.
Come on now. I tell you, when I first became introduced to you and your work, and I think now I know that I know a small portion of it, but the phrase that you use often that just stuck with me is stop playing diversity. I can hear you saying it's not stop playing diversity. It's like stop playing diversity.
Yes.
And tell me what you mean by that. Stop playing.
Yeah, so this is part of the story. I feel like there's so much that has happened in this space where I am in this city. But when I was hired to this institution, I asked people if they were playing diversity. because I wanted to make sure that I would not be in a place where I would be harmed. I wanted to make sure that people would accept me with how I am, because I'm very open on social media. I blog. I told people this is who I am and what I represent. But I noticed that when I came into that organization, people had problems with it. I was told by a supervisor I was too authentic, and that's not how department chairs are. Department chairs are not on social media. You know, I was exposing a lot of things that were not real. And there's just this issue where you're in an organization and people expect you in a position of leadership to honor that organization, but so many people were being harmed. And I had to figure out, do I continue in this space knowing that it could lead me to my next level? Or do I listen to the people who are being hurt and bruised beyond repair, kicked out with no way to heal, or being expected to heal on their own? You know, what do I do? And my story is that I started tweeting. Like, I would do things every day, and I'm like, this is what I'm learning. This is how I think people should engage. And the aha moment for me is that a young woman, I always tell this story, a young woman who was in graduate school direct messaged me, because I always have people coming into my DMs. I would think that I'm just putting stories out there, and people would say, let me tell you how this one tweet impacted me. And this woman said that she was thinking of ending her life, but my words kept her going.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And that's when I questioned this. I said, what is it about just writing, at the time, 140 character tweets that resonates with people? And I just think so many people have come to me to say that they feel seen, that I am saying the words that are in them, and they thought they were alone, but they're not alone. So the other aha moment that I tell people is that I thought that my path was to be this administrator giving my training to uphold these organizations, but somehow my life has shifted so that I am this mouthpiece for people who feel unseen in those organizations.
That's such a profound yet subtle shift. It feels like it's turned on its head, but I can see the turn of the ship, so to speak. Certainly being a clinician, I understand the weight and the privilege of hearing someone say, you gave me the encouragement to go on to the next day.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible honor. You don't know you're saying those words. I too am trained for those things, right? But when someone says to you, you gave me the will to, the desire to, you saw me such that I see that there's place for me on this earth.
Yeah.
That is, it's transformative. And I think the other thing you talked about, I just had a conversation with someone earlier today, I think it was, about the difference, about what transformation is. You're talking about transforming individuals, the work of transforming a space, an institution in this country, right? And anywhere, transformation is slow and long.
Right.
And so to give people space to gain what you can from those places and find your land outside. I love that as a metaphor. The word picture is beautiful. I love that. So you have your child. Your child's a son, right? You have a little boy. When I think about who I imagine, I don't know. I would imagine anybody could be empowered by your words, but I think women in particular will be empowered by the words you give them to see themselves to use in these spaces. You have a little boy. How do you see raising up this man to recognize his place, I think, in a place that is particularly hostile to Black men? Yeah. And by the same token, make him sensitive to his role to come along to sisters. Yeah. You know, is that too big a question?
No,
I don't think for you.
It isn't. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I will say, I mean, I have to start off, even before my child was born, because this is almost like a spiritual thing. But
Mhm.
as I said, I was pregnant when I was going through all the stuff I was going through. Like, it was a really hostile environment. And I would often like rub my belly when he was in the womb. I never really felt him kick, or I was never sick at all. And I'd had issues with infertility, but I actually got pregnant naturally with my son after all of that. And it was 3 months after my father passed. And I was just thinking, like, who is this child
Yeah.
supposed to be? Because I'd gone through so much stuff. And I named him Solomon, which means rest, because I had had so much unrest. And the peace was just there. No, it doesn't mean rest. It means peace. I'm sorry. That's somebody else in my book. So peace.
We'll get to that.
I missed it. I missed it.
Solomon
But
means
yes,
rest.
it means peace.
Peace.
No,
I'm
peace.
sorry, peace.
And I will
know
say that even when like my mother was ill at the time, she was in the hospital, and we were finally able to go and see her, and he kissed her head, and she got out of the hospital, and she was just, it's almost like there was just something there.
She rallied.
Yes. And even when he first saw his grandfather, who was in a wheelchair, my husband's father, he was 3 years old, and he put the blanket over his grandfather, and he wanted to push the wheelchair to support him. So it's naturally in him to be empathetic. I mean, it's told that he comforts the other children. He always wants hugs and all that. I think my thing as a parent, though, is that he's so kind. Very empathetic, very loving, very like believing a lot of the best of people. And so my husband and I are very conscious of that. I think we're going to be honest with him. So it's one of those things. I just know how to be direct, but I think my approach is going to be honest. If he asks something of me, then I'm going to approach it with a really honest answer. That's how I learned about racism.
Yeah.
At the age of 4 or 5, I saw a Ku Klux Klan rally, and I asked my parents, why are these people wearing sheets? And to be told that people who didn't like me or didn't know me, didn't like me, that forever made me realize what was going on. So I know that day is coming, but I don't feel that I need to shield him from that, because this is the history and the reality of this world.
It's the reality. Prepare him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I just know it's coming, but there is no fear.
There's quite a balance to strike. My sons are grown. And this balance of, I want to prepare you. I still want you, though, to move about the world as if you have full access, or you have the opportunity to be whatever you want to be, go wherever you want to go, but you have to have an awareness. And how we have this awareness and preparation without your being bitter, without leading with bitterness. Anger is okay. It's some ish that makes you angry out here. I think anger is fine. I think you suppress it too long, it makes you sick. It diminishes you. But bitterness will kill you from the inside. So I want an awareness. I want you moving about with that. I want you to understand the things that aren't fair. There are things that aren't fair. Life isn't fair. But you can still go out and be all you want to be, all you need to be. But there's a tension.
Yes.
There's a tension.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a real responsibility to raise any child. But certainly my experience as a Black woman, I raised Black sons. We have a Black father. There are sensitivities that we just have to prepare them for. Yeah. I love that. So you have your consulting space now. So have you left academia altogether? Okay.
No.
Okay.
I still work there.
You still work there?
I do.
Okay. I'm sure by choice, because you can do anything you want to do.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so help me with this a little bit. There's a lot of difficulty, some wounding, some issues, as in, I think, any institution, right, for diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know that. You've addressed it. You've been in some battles because of it.
Yeah.
But you choose to stay. Why is that?
Yeah, so I have a podcast episode about this, and it's like, why don't I leave? What does that look like? One, I worked really hard to be there. Yeah. From a credential perspective, I did what I needed to do. That was the goal that I worked toward. But sometimes I think, like, because of the level where I am, I don't think that there are enough people who are behind me quite yet too.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what it's like to be in these rooms, like these promotion and tenure rooms where there are conversations. And if there's one person who does not speak up, that has shifted the entire dynamic of an organization. And so I think that's one thing, or maybe that was the second thing. And then I often tell people, I feel that I am called to do this. I have the grace to do this. I was in a space, it was a social media space, and someone was talking. And so often when bad things happen in organizations, you'll go through different processes and the person is silenced. So if there's something that's happened, someone's like, you know what, yep, we did wrong. Here's a settlement. Here's something. Be quiet. And the person will leave. But I'm all about systems. I'm all about shifting. And if I am still in a place where I can do the work and benefit people, why not be in those spaces and say, this needs to be exposed in the space.
In the space.
It's just a different way to disrupt. It's a different way to change the game, because there are so few people who've gotten to this space. And when many of them have gotten to this space, they have done nothing with it. And I feel that for the moment that I am here, it is my pleasure to expose. It is my pleasure to push. And I feel that similar to what I said about people contacting me, as I push, the calling and the way of moving is bigger than I am. And there are other people who are pushing in other organizations too. So it's exposing.
Well, it's legacy
space.
too. You talked about legacy,
It is.
about moving other people toward their legacy. And you're doing your work in the institutions and outside of the institutions simultaneously. That's a thing. That's a thing.
It is. And I would say, like, I don't know what the end is going to look like. Like, it's that part too, where I feel like there's always risk.
What's an end? What's an end? I don't know that you don't end
You know
until
what it
you're
is?
gone.
So the end, and that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, really, when I say end, it's like if you're on a trajectory and you're doing right and you're well behaved, then you know there's that next promotion, there's that next thing. But is a system really going to be like, oh, I want Monica to lead us because if we do wrong, I will expose you. I don't care. And so I do think there's this space where people don't know what to do with me, but then I'm still competent in the space where I am. And so I know that my motivation cannot be the accolades. So that's what also keeps me going, because if I'm looking at the title, if I'm looking at the money, if I'm looking at all those things that reward me because I behave, then I will never do what I think is right in that system if the system does not do what it needs to do. So that's what I mean with the risk.
Yes.
There could be attacks. It could be anything. Like, there are attacks on higher education. There are attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, I have been harassed. I have had emails sent about me. I've had police reports. I've had all those things that happen when you move forward with this kind of action, when you take these risks and when you say, this is where I stand. So it's
I'm
that
not
part.
afraid of you, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not afraid of you.
I'm not.
I know you can do harm, but you only do as much harm as I feel. You come from such a power position. That power is born out of awareness, right? And wounds, all those things. I think they make you stronger if you lean into them.
Yes.
That's my paradigm, and you've certainly done that. There's another thing that's really interesting to me about you. And so I talk about, the premise of my show being, you're the mover and the shaker in your own life or sphere of influence. And what types of things, and you've shared some of your experience that keeps you in the space of academia and has fueled some of your consulting. And then you go and write a book that's a novel. That's kind of a romance novel. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
The character, I think, sounds a lot like she's come from your experience. But like, what? That's unexpected with all of this.
There is a story.
I love it. I'd love to hear the story.
Okay. So the story is,
Okay.
I know,
You had to ask.
it's interesting, and people would not know this. So I partnered with some other women during the pandemic, and we decided to each write a character. So it was going to be this big thing that was going to be groundbreaking. And the collaboration was not as successful, I think, as it should have been.
Okay.
I think that there were a lot of things that were going on. And I spent a lot of time writing my novel. Time away from my husband, from my child, my mom. And when the situation just wasn't, when I saw that we were going to have to go our separate ways, I wanted to push the novel aside. But my husband said, "You've spent so much time doing this. Like, you need to get that novel out." So I was going to self-publish it. And that was like its own thing, its own learning curve. And I ended up getting COVID in August. And when I was sick, this was the first time I got it, I just decided, I was reading a lot of books. And even before that, I was reading a lot of books. And so there was an author, and they kept talking about Beloved Publications. If you want to have your book submitted, contact her. And she's a Black woman publisher. And I just did. And all of a sudden, it's like, send me the rest of the book. I had it edited and ready, and I got a book contract. So this was like in August. And I decided to release it on what would have been my father's 90th birthday in October. And this was like 3 years of me writing and watching videos and getting it edited and querying and just finally saying, I'm going to send it to this last publisher to see if there's something to it. And it was accepted. And so that's kind of where it came from.
Okay.
So this has turned around over the past couple of months where I didn't even know if it would come out, but it did.
Okay. It did.
It did.
And I read it. And I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And the main character, Miranda, has a lot of similarities to you. Like she's in tech and academia, and she's an entrepreneur. She's a beautiful brown woman with natural hair. There's just a lot about just her construct as an individual. I don't know about her story, but her construct as an individual that remind me of you. And I imagine I'm writing a book as well, but it's not fiction, right? So it's a very different mindset. Did you know you were infusing yourself in this character? Or did she show up to you? I like to hear how people's imaginations work.
I always knew that I would want to write about something that I knew. I didn't want to have to do a ton of research to be like, well, is this real? Is this not real? So there, a lot of that professional piece is me. Okay. And then, of course, I read about Columbus. So one of my characters is based in Columbus. So it was just all that stuff of how can I make this not so stressful as I write. The thing that I say that's kind of a spoiler alert is, well, maybe it's not, but I feel fiction allowed me to let her move in ways that I did not learn. I mean, I didn't move. And there are lessons learned that I put in there that I hoped would empower people in a way that, it took me a long time to learn. So it was the fiction part, not just the love story, but the fiction of this is how a woman responds, even as she's engaged in places that oppress her and could break her spirit, but she's not going to get to that place where it breaks her spirit.
I like her. She's very strong, but she's flawed, right? She has her moments where but she pulls it together and makes a decision in her best interest. That's what I've seen pretty consistently. I shared with you, and we have a little bit of chit chat time when I'm making our cocktail and all. And I talked to you a little bit about one of my favorite chapters in the book. The book is called Legacy Unleashed, y'all, by Monica Cox. So we'll make sure you know all about that. You can get it I have it in a digital version. Is it also, and can you get it in paperback?
Yes.
Yeah. So we want to make sure you do that. But there's a chapter. It's chapter 16. I know what chapter it is. I read it a couple times. And it's probably not it's pivotal. I think it's pivotal. Yeah. But what I love about that chapter is the way you wrote conversation.
Thank you.
The bounce back from the conversation, and you could feel a person anticipating their next statement or the tension that Miranda had.
Yeah.
The surprise of someone she didn't expect to be in the room, and it was just believable. I could see the room.
Thank you.
I could feel the characters moving about the room.
Mm-hmm.
I could see the big wigs in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
It just was
That's
so
right. I just remembered
well
that.
done. It was just, I
you.
just enjoyed it. I love a book when I realize that I've been transported to their space.
Thank you.
And I was at that restaurant. And the encounter between the two ladies, I was full on board with that.
And it was,
You know?
and it was Atlanta. So this was a thing too.
Yeah.
Set in Atlanta,
Yeah.
where you're going to see a lot of Black people,
Yeah.
a lot of important people. And we talked about the class piece. Like
Yes.
that was really important.
There's classism,
for
there's
me.
jealousy, there's
Absolutely. And one thing that someone told me a long time ago, like we always talk about the down and out, but who takes care of the up and out? And so it has just been me trying to show that even if someone has the degrees, the money, the influence, because my male character is the son of a senator, so comes from money and just
and access.
yes,
and he's polished. He shows all of that.
Absolutely,
And fine.
but they
Describe
and
some
fine,
fine
yes,
brothers.
thank you. And they have their flaws, and I feel too that hopefully that provides some insight so that people do have empathy for people and know that just because you have money, you know, that doesn't mean that you don't have troubles when it comes to your business or your job or your relationships or your health. There are so, I mean, I tried to hit on all those themes
you did.
with her as a young woman and the decisions she had to make and just the downs. You know, I wanted to see them, I wanted people to see her cry, be upset, to grieve relationships. And
none of that diminished her potential. It made it real.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is important, especially when you're on this achievement track.
Yeah.
And you think that you can't be flawed. You got to hide your flaws. You can't. You know, we try not to cry. How many people say, I'm not going to cry, I'm not going to cry. Crying is a reflex.
Yes.
It's not a weak thing. It's a reflex. You have to work against it.
Yes.
We're made to do that.
Yes.
It's okay. And this character does all of that. You know, I really enjoyed it. I'm excited that you shared that there's more to come with this character.
Yes.
And so that's fun because I felt like there was more to be, like you left it at a place where a good, like Netflix, because I can see a screenplay fully.
Thank you.
You could end it if you wanted to.
Yes.
But why would you? Like there's more to do.
Yes.
So.
And the surprise ending. People are always like, the ending.
Yeah, the ending was a surprise ending. That's true.
Yes.
It was a surprise ending. And the fact that with all of this space, you're in tech, you have done all this diversity work and consulting work, and that, is this your first book?
My first novel.
First novel.
Yes.
Fact about that, it was a novel, that's where you went, that there was this side of you that's creative.
Yeah.
And I had a guest here, actually the podcast that just dropped, and he talked about what is creativity. It's almost a limiting word. And he says that, why isn't the engineer creative? Creativity is problem solving. We need to expand how we see creativity. And I love that. I think of my husband at times, who's business guy, very gifted leader, all of that kind of stuff. But there wasn't a place where he really knew to express creativity. He came from a very hardworking family. And he married this chick who loves music and singing and all of that kind of stuff, right? And so he had to learn how to traffic in my language a little bit. And as it turns out, he's got quite an eye. He's very creative. He's good with words. He's good with color and texture. Like we worked together on designing this home and decorating this home. I didn't really include him in any of that previously. And because you do that thing and I do this thing, and and you'll live it and be happy.
Right. And
when I started to incorporate his thoughts, it was not only pretty but functional. It just was better. And so I too am expanding what I know about creativity and all the many ways our gifts can intertwine. And you, my dear, are quite a beautiful example of a number of things, of powerful intellect, of courage, people are getting tired of the word resilience, but it's a true word. You got to get back up from some things. You've gotten back up from some things. Oh, yeah. And you're expressing yourself in a number of ways. I am so thrilled to have spent this time with you. Thank you. And to see what you got going next. So we're going to wrap up. So we got to toast our
Okay.
conversation.
Okay. Excuse me.
Today I made a mocktail and a cocktail. I put gin in mine, but this is just a kind of a holiday punch. There's some starting to thin out with the ice is melting. There's pomegranate juice, pineapple juice, equal parts pomegranate and pineapple juice, a little bit of simple syrup, squeeze some fresh lime. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. Garnished it with a little mint, a lime slice. It's pretty refreshing, I think. Well, cheers.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Cheers.
I hope, good people, actually, I'm confident that somewhere in this story, you found something that you connected with, that motivated you, that encouraged you, or that exposed you. And I hope you take it to your life and let it shake you up to your next thing. All right? Till next time, take care.